All right, everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining us for the first group therapy for customer marketers of 2024. Super excited. And quickly, just wanted to let you all know that I'll put a link in the chat. This panel, this group of customer marketing, Customer X pros spoke on stage at CustomerXCon 2023, and the content was great, the feedback was great, and we wanted to bring it back to the masses of the greater community and share even more learnings that they had, because they probably didn't have enough time on that stage. They probably could have gone on longer, which is awesome. So we brought them back, minus one. We're missing Jeannie, but she's here with us in spirit. Busy lady. And yes, so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Daniel. And any future group therapy topics, we plan to do these quarterly. Put a note into the chat for any topics you really would love to see, or if you'd love to be a participant in one of these. Any questions that you have for the group, put them in. I'll be helping Daniel see some of the questions as he goes through and moderates this group. And join us live for group therapy in person at CustomerXCon 2024. Going to be in Boston, October 21st to the 23rd. And you can do this in person at a table with your peers and really dig into the topics and issues. So with that, handing over to you, Daniel. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. And I have to say, it's a little bit different for me to be on this side of a therapy session. Normally, I'm the one complaining and working through things. So best of luck to y'all listening to me as the leader of this. I'm Daniel. I have the pleasure of leading this said group therapy session. And normally in my day job, I lead customer and community marketing in a company called Grafana Labs. Prior to that, I was at Elastic for 7 years. But my ticket into this conversation is before I was in tech, I was in politics, where I used to send emails at like 1 million emails at a time. So I've had my foot in this realm for a while. Normally, I'm based in San Jose, California, but I'm the silly fool that booked a vacation during this time. So I'm sitting here in Maui at 6 a.m., nicely enough with all of you fine people. I'm not complaining that I'm in Maui. I'm just complaining that it's 6 a.m. But enough about me jibber jabbing. Let's get to the people that you signed up to listen to. So I have the pleasure of introducing 3 amazing peers of mine. First of which is Shannon Howard. Shannon is the director of customer content marketing at Intellum. She, for the last 12 years, has sort of bounced around between marketing, education, and product, and found her way into the perfect situation where she is actually marketing an education product. So way to find that sweet spot. Last I checked, she was a team of 2, but I saw something along the lines that she actually added a social media manager or social media contractor. So we can even talk about social media stuff. So perhaps it's a team of 2.5 now. So that's awesome. She's passionate about community, serving others, and learning new things, and lives on campus at a small college as a mentor, health coach, and teacher. Hi, Shannon. Next is Allison Zach. Allison, I think I calculated this right, is entering her 10th month as the customer engagement and advocacy manager at Own Company, which all of you might know as Own Backup. And they literally rebranded while we were on stage at CustomerXCon. So that was kind of a nice thing to, change around. Allison started her career in brand and UX writing. Like most of us, sort of side entered customer advocacy, but also developed a passion for writing amazing emails and giving people what they wanted when they wanted. Outside of work, you can find her and her partner at any number of local farmers markets, though since she's back east, I don't know how many farmers markets have been going on with all of the snow y'all had, or just lounging around with their 2 cats, which I am very jealous of. And last but not least, Kara Peterson recently started at HackerOne as their customer advocacy manager, and she has the wonderful honor of living on Cape Cod, which I hear is amazing, where she gets to enjoy nice long walks with her dogs on the beach. Hello, all of y'all. There's lots of waves. So we're going to do some quick introductions, even though I just sort of talked for a little bit of time. Panelists, I'm going to ask y'all, I guess we'll start with Shannon, since I introduced you first. Let's go through some rapid fire. What is your current role in Purview? What about in the past? Any prior roles that stick out for this topic? What keeps you up at night? And what do you do for fun outside of work?
Oh, yeah, a lot of questions. Director of Customer and Content Marketing. Role currently includes all things customer engagement, advocacy, lifecycle communications, content, including social, downloadable content, all that good stuff, blog content, events, and yeah, just communications in general. Background, I've just done email for a long time. Email is my first marketing love. And so this is really a topic I love to talk about because we're talking about communicating with our customers, not just through email, but other channels too. What keeps me up at night? There's just always more to do. And so little time to do it. So that is the thing that keeps me up. And outside of work, I just have way too many hobbies, and it changes all the time. So this year I'm pursuing herbalism and studying that. Yeah, a little about me.
Awesome. Allison, you were next on my introduction list, so over to you.
Perfect. And I'm going to see if I can remember everything that was asked. So let's dive in. Current title, Customer Advocacy and Engagement Manager at Own Company, like Daniel mentioned, which encompasses our in-person advocate programming from user meetups to technical programming, some life cycle communication, so cross-sell, upsell, and then general advocacy initiatives. We're pretty early in our community journey, so laying the groundwork for a future advocate community at Own. What keeps me up at night? I am on a strict melatonin regimen, so nothing, because I won't let it. And what do I like to do for fun? I love to cook. Yeah, cooking is my biggest hobby, but like Daniel said, I like to be out and about, and my partner and I have two lovely cats who keep us very busy.
Awesome. And Kara, last but not least, over to you.
Kara Peterson. So I'm actually 4 weeks into a brand new job at HackerOne. But previously I was at Sligo and Gainsight where I was a team of one. And this is my first advocacy position where I'm not a team of one. So I'm very excited about that one. And a little bit of background, I fell into advocacy completely by accident. I was actually a sales rep at the time and knew I did not want to be in sales. So I just met every week with someone who had a really cool job on LinkedIn. And one week I was meeting with a head of brand and he was like, explain your perfect job. And I ended up explaining customer advocacy. And that is what led me to here today. And then my current job responsibilities, granted 4 weeks in, so this is probably going to expand at some point, but really creating a better experience for our customers and our internal teams with creating a better flow for our customer content, and then also managing everything that comes, with customer communication. So, if we have a speaker or if we have someone who needs to hop on a reference call, that is my responsibilities. And like Allison, I very much believe in work-life balance, so I do not get kept up with anything at night as much as I possibly try. Making sure really to focus on, my priorities so I'm not, burnt out or anything like that. And then what I do for fun outside of work, I love cooking and I love eating unhealthy food. So I try to mix those both. So I try to make healthy alternatives to your favorite takeout. So like, for example, like I love a Big Mac, so I turn that into a really good salad. So I love doing creative little exercises like that.
Awesome. Well, welcome all of y'all. Now that we've kind of introduced our panelists, we like to keep this interactive. I know it's a little bit harder via Zoom than what we had in Boston. So first question, I guess this is like the 9th question because I asked y'all 8. The first question beyond just introductions is actually to the audience. Just so we know who we're talking to. So we're going to talk a lot about customer communications, but just so we know the background, why don't you write in the chat, like who owns customer comms at your place of business, or if you're in between jobs, the last place, or your favorite place you've ever been. The point is we want people to answer the question. Aha, thank you, Melissa. You win the prize of being first to answer. Well done. As people are answering it, we'll kick off and we'll kind of come back here to sort of see where we are and where we agree on going forward. So Shannon, the first question is for you. We live in a world with lots of different types of communication, and it keeps going and keeps building on a day-to-day basis, right? We got personal email, we got mass emails, we got work emails, we got, Slack. I'm sorry for anyone who has to use Teams. My wife has to use Teams. It is terrible. We got Zooms, we got text messages, we got various different, social media and whatnot. So how do you balance all the different types of communication, not just that you're sending, but that you're trying to keep in your head?
Ooh, don't know that I have nailed keeping it like in my head between all those different channels, because there's a lot of different channels. But in terms of like managing this internally at companies, I think because I have a background in email and then also just being in customer marketing, it had kind of made sense that I would oversee customer communications, different communications that are going out. Doesn't mean that I always knew all the communications that were going out one-to-one. So something I've done is establish an Asana calendar that just is an like a air cover overview, high level, like what all is going out. And so on there, we're looking at what's going out and when, who is it going out to, what is it related to? Is this a product communication? Is this an event communication? Is this just a recurring customer communication? Is this education related communication? We're using that for more air traffic control. So we can look at something, or let's say we need to give a heads up, right? So like in the last year, I've done 2 sub-processor notifications. When you add a new sub-processor, you have to give people a heads up so they can like ask if they have any questions. And so people will just kind of reach out and say, hey, we need to give our customers a heads up about this. And we've just established kind of a working relationship where people will say, we need to get this out. Here's who it needs to go to. When would you recommend, or what works for the calendar? So I think we've tried to establish those expectations internally, that there is a calendar, there is a process. We of course want to support you in getting this communication out to people, but we also don't want people to get, you know, inundated with communication. And we want to make sure that they're actually, you know, opening it and paying attention. If we send them 3 emails in a day, it's probably not going to happen. So that's been helpful in just kind of establishing like that we're streamlining all of these communications, not that one person has to own it all, but just that there is visibility kind of over it all, and making sure. And I think honestly, in the past few roles I've been in, people are pretty happy to turn that over because they don't want to be responsible for all the different communications. So if you are willing to wrangle, I found that people are pretty agreeable to that.
Awesome. Allison, anything to add? And Maureen, I saw your question in there. I will get back to that in a second.
No, I think Shannon is totally on the money with the Asana calendar. We're I think a little earlier in our stage, so we're working towards that. And our process right now is building out what are the things we're missing in our calendar. Obviously, we see what we see, but like Shannon mentioned, there's one-to-one communications that go out that we obviously don't approve or look at. And there are other updates that have to go out, product updates that aren't necessarily a customer marketing initiative. So I think I am at least the stage we're at, so a little earlier than Shannon, is all about learning what we don't know and figuring out a way to track that, because you know we don't know everything at the start.
And Kara, I hesitate to ask you because you're 4 weeks in, but perhaps you like this is the one thing that you jumped into right away. Be like, I gotta have a calendar.
Yeah, so I have to agree with Allison. We are still like, I remember taking a note when we were in live in Boston and be like, oh my God, I need to do this at my next organization, just like, because that is something that I didn't have at any organization prior. So I'm definitely with Allison there that it's something that we should definitely do, but we're probably very much in the early beginning stages of that.
Awesome. And I would say that, you know, Asana, Monday, we used to actually do a lot of stuff at my old job in GitHub, mostly because like all of us came from, you know, developer backgrounds. Well, not all of us. I certainly didn't. You don't want me anywhere close to code. I break everything. But you know, it was just a GitHub culture. So anywhere where you can sort of get that sort of Kanban board or things of that nature, I think really helps for people to see those types of things. And it looks like, Maureen, you got your question asked or answered, but if there's anything else, please continue to add it to the chat. Anyway, back to you, Shannon. So we sort of have the schedule. Now let's talk about how you actually break down the giant universe of people you send to. So what kind of segmentation are you using when you think about the different types of communication you're using?
That is a great question. And there's a lot of different ways that you can segment, right? So it depends on, I think, like who needs to receive this communication, right? So for example, if we're making an update, right, to those sub-processors, that communication really only needs to go to the people who would know what the heck that is and have a problem with it or not. So that's like a much smaller segment of people. I don't need to message everybody about this. I might, you know, unnecessarily set off some red flags for people, or cause some concern where there doesn't need to be any. Same thing with like different types of events, looking at who is this right for? Who are the right kind of people in our database or in our customer pool who are going to get the most out of this? So for example, we started a new program specifically for our admins who are kind of the everyday users of our platform. That's not something I want to invite executive sponsors to, right? Because they're not really in the weeds. It's not going to be a beneficial conversation for them. I also look at, let's say, around product releases or product updates. Is someone already using this, right? So if I'm releasing an update to a feature, the communication there is different if you already have the feature, the tool, if you're already using it or not, or if you haven't been introduced to it at all. And so I'm thinking about those segmentations. And then especially if there's multiple things coming out at a time, you know, what is going to be most useful and valuable to that person, which might mean that I don't tell you about everything that's new and good, because you might not need to know, it might not be interesting. And I would rather you pay attention to the one thing that makes sense for you in your journey today, than pay attention to everything that's going on. So I think a lot about that, like who is the right person within the account? What do they need to have done for this to be useful and relevant to them? Yeah, and then is there anything else, you know, so for example, Maureen's talking about review campaigns, right? Probably want to target people who are engaged, maybe people who are happy. And so I want to use those things to segment my communications for that as well.
Cool. A quick follow-up to Kara on this one, because you and I were talking beforehand. Like, so what Shannon is talking about, a little bit anecdotal, a little bit like feel of it, but especially in somebody who's brand new into the organization, perhaps you don't have that background. So how do you use data that's available to you to segment that type of thing?
Yeah, definitely. So this is definitely when I was at Celigo. We had a kind of interesting, a lot of our CSMs just didn't have a personal relationship with their accounts. So we had some accounts that maybe had 40 people who were logging into the platform, but a CSM obviously did not have that relationship with them. So using that data was really helpful. And then also if you use anything like ThoughtSpot or one of their competitors that I've never used, you can also use that data to see how they're actually using your platform, where they're logging in, where they're creating different workflows. So that was really helpful about one, finding reference requests. If you have customers who are not super engaged and you need to fill a reference request, it's really hard to build that connection when you don't really have, you know, that personal connection where you can reach out. So I was actually able to use our user data to be like, oh, I see that you are XYZ at this organization and you're using this flow, you know, on a monthly basis. Would you mind connecting with this customer? So I was able to kind of create a personal outreach by just using the data that we had internally to create that connection, and also really explaining like who is on the other end of that call to make the call a little bit more beneficial for our customer.
Awesome. Allison, now that we talked about the anecdotal, we talked about the data side. So let's talk about the content side. Like, how do you keep your messaging personalized? Like, now that you found the people you want to send to, like, how do you build that, and how do you make sure that what they're getting is the right thing at the right time for the right person?
Yeah, I think I would approach it in maybe a couple different ways. Thinking of primarily Shannon's example of what kind of customers are ripe to receive this message. I then think about what are they supposed to receive? Like if it's a product update, if there was an error, obviously we don't want to say like, we did something really bad for 15 hours, sorry. So I think part very small is turning that message into something that might make more sense, might be more soothing, reference a fix. But I think on a larger scale, I really try to approach it with like my customer eyeballs on. I'm reading it as a customer. I'm not reading it as me, someone who knows like the inner workings of OWN. I'm reading it as someone who has a really different view. And I think just keeping in mind what's going to resonate with them, what they already know about the product, keeping it very focused on how they're going to see it and not how you would see it would be my biggest takeaway from personalizing content.
Awesome. And it's a sort of bookend this foray into this topic. Shannon, back to you, like, you know, given all of the purview that you have, not just emails, like how do you make sure that, like, you know, looking at this, like, you keep it personalized to the specific user that you're talking to, and not just like, you know, you got thousands of users that you're emailing all at once, and you want to make sure that it's useful for everybody?
I will say, I don't know that I have this down to a science, because there's so many different, right? You can do dynamic, you know, personalization. unless you have a dedicated email team and one of a pretty significant size, I don't know that you're using that, right? And if your data isn't clean, then it's really not helpful for segmenting those communications either. For me as a marketer, especially in customer marketing, I just want to be really close to the voice of the customer. Like I should know what's top of mind for them. All the questions that we talked about in the beginning, what's your purview? What keeps you up at night? Who are you as a human? Like I want to keep all those things in mind. So when I'm creating this communication, to Allison's point, I'm not assuming that you know something that you don't, or that you're as familiar with our product if you're not. But then I also want to keep in mind, you're probably likely limited on time. How do I frame this? How do I talk to you and build that relationship? I think when we think of personalization, we often think like, I know exactly who Daniel is. And I know things like, I know he's in Maui right now. And I know, what's going on in his life. It doesn't have to be that level, like just having a personality. And I know we've talked about this a little bit in some of the customer marketing channels around sending, as a person within a company versus sending from the company itself, right? Companies can have a personality, but it's not quite the same as a designated person, whether it's customer marketing person, someone on your customer success team, and sending as that person and infusing a little bit more personality, I have found like really helps to build those relationships at scale. It's pretty wild how many people write back and be like, hey, Shannon, so glad you emailed me today. Like I emailed you and like thousands of other people, but to them, it does feel much more personal. And so I also want to encourage people to like, not to feel like you're behind the times on personalization, because most of us are doing more of that tops down personalization by segment than we are like bottoms up individual user.
Yeah, I think that's certainly important. I think at our core, we just want to be heard and listened to or connected with, as opposed to dear first name, nice to meet you. We're doing this, right? I mean, not just beyond the first name, but where we are in our journey, I think is significantly important. And Kristen, I think welcome to group therapy, because nobody actually has clean dynamic data anywhere. And I think we can all agree that Salesforce data or whatever CRM data is just literally there to you. So you spend more time and money in therapy than everybody else. So well done, Salesforce, keeping a generation of therapists employed. All right. So we've talked about the personalization, we talked about data, we talked about the anecdotes. Allison, this next question is for you. So how do you use data to inform your communication strategy as a whole, right? We're not just talking about, the individual emails or things, but as you're looking at that full, chessboard, as it were.
Yeah. I think when we're looking at the full board, obviously I'm not approaching Salesforce with like a wizard's perspective. I don't understand what every single thing means. I think part of it is finding the people who are experts at your organization in a particular part in the customer lifecycle. I'm not going to know how to design an onboarding journey for the customer if I don't actually know what their onboarding looks like, what they think their onboarding looks like, and even what they call it. I learned last week that we call ours implementation. We do not call it onboarding. Mistake on my part. But I think finding the people at your company who know what the right thing to say is crucial when you're using that. And that's, I think, data in a different sense than Salesforce. That's data in the sense of qualitative data, what people know to be true, even if it's not tracked anywhere. I also did have a comment about Kristen's point about bad data. I just write our communications as if I know that it's wrong. If we're inviting someone to something in London, I have no idea if they're in London. I say, if I missed a team member who is in London, let me know. If you're not, let me know where you are. And then I have cleaner data on the other end, and they don't feel like they've been like insulted. So I think part of the bad data is like, how can you accommodate for knowing that there's going to be an error? And if you do, can you, even if it's just one tiny speck of cleaner data, can you work towards that in the comms that you're designing?
And I think where people are is always hard, right? You have I live in the Bay Area normally, and so we're marketing to a bunch of people in the Bay Area, but guess what? A lot of companies in the Bay Area have remote teams, and so we can't necessarily rely on that. So like I'm in the process of trying to find speakers for an event in the Bay Area. Half the people we work with are in Toronto or London. I'm like, yeah, I don't have the budget to fly somebody in from there to speak in the Bay Area. So yeah, that data question is always a fun one to keep us up at night. Going back to the first one. So we talk about the various, you know, that type of strategy and the various teams you're working with to understand that journey. So Kara, to you, how many people or teams, you know, we don't have to talk about exact numbers of people, like should review and check off on the things that you're about to send, right? Do you have to go to all of the product people? Do you have to go to all of these things?
Yeah, so it also totally depends on, what you're sending out and how my rule of thumb is anything I'm not confident in saying myself, then I will go out and reach for help. Like, for example, if it's something super technical, I'm not a technical expert, so I'm going to ask for product. But whenever I do make those asks, I always make it super clear. Like, for example, like, oh, I need to send it out by this date. Always adding that in the Slack message or email really helps your cross-functional teams like know when they have to get back to you. They have so many other responsibilities. And for example, especially if you work for a global company, I have a coworker who is currently working in Bali, so I have no idea what that time change is. So like really making sure you're working with your schedule. And what I do currently, whenever I have a one-on-one meeting with someone, I just ask them like, what's the best way to work with you? Like, what is your communication style? Like, for example, do you work best like me sending you a Slack, an email, or like, are you better to just like talk through something on a 5-minute Zoom? So I'm at a very lucky standpoint where I'm 4 weeks in, so I'm the new person, so everyone pretty much wants to talk to me, but I think it's a good thing to continue to do throughout your career or your time at a company. It's just asking people those super simple questions, and it also kind of helps you, like, if you're working with their work style, it also helps you in the end where they'll also work with your style. Like, for example, like I said, I like to keep my work-life balance very secure, so I don't really tend to answer something after 8 p.m., and people do respect that if you respect their boundaries.
Think we can all agree that respecting people's boundaries is something that we want to have done for us, says the guy who's on vacation and is working on vacation. So don't follow me. That's why I'm in therapy. Kara, to your question, it is in fact 6:29 a.m. in Tahiti/Bora Bora right now. So they're on the same time zone as me.
Oh.
So do not email them right now because it is quite early. Cool. Let's go to Allison Chen. Anything on your end? Like, how do you approach like involving other people at your companies to sign off? Or if you are just the grand poobah of email/communications, you're like, screw you, I'm doing this myself.
I can jump in, and Allison, if you have anything. Yeah, in today's world, I do work with people. So I was working on a customer communication the other day and realized as I was going through, I don't actually know, like who should they email if they have questions, and what is the process for the next step for this, right? So we were making a change to like kind of the back end of something. And so I had to go like wrestle those things out. But I do currently have kind of the final say on what the customer communication looks like. That has not always been the case. I've previously, been in customer marketing, and the email team had the final say, which was great because they're amazing email copywriters. So they would take what I did and jazz it up and edit it and make it better. And I actually, in that way, love like having a review process because other people are, Allison, to your point, like you're looking at it differently than maybe someone else will. So whether it's a terminology thing, hey, that's actually not, the next step here. That's not who someone should contact. That's not the appropriate way of saying that. We can get that call out, but then we can also kind of get the copy review. And I'll also sometimes just depending on like the level of communication and who it's going to, maybe run it by our VP of account management, make sure that she has seen it and is good with how something's being communicated. If it's to like executive sponsors, for example.
I think our at OWN most closely mirrors Rachel's in the chat. We usually get a lot of PM or PMM coming to us with things that they need to send but don't necessarily have the tools to get that out the door. And I agree with Rachel. I'm not super techie. Our products are, but PM and PMM have that on lock. I think for us it's we're going in the opposite order. So we're the massagers at the end and not the people at the beginning. But yeah, I think for us, we're very lucky in that we have trained other teams to come to us before they want to hit the big send button, which is great. Love that. But yeah, we're often getting very, very tech heavy stuff from PMM and PM that we're having to sort of translate into like happy, easy to read speak.
You saying that technical content isn't always the most humanly readable? But this is my shocked face. I have a quick follow-up, non-joking follow-up, Alice, on that front, but I'm going to mention something. I'm going to ask a question that might just give all of us heartburn. How many people have had to involve legal in some of these reviews? Anybody? Yeah. That's always fun. But Allison, back to you. So like you mentioned, you sort of trained people to come to you to ask for questions, which is great when people actually know that you are the gatekeepers. So how did you get your colleagues who aren't in customer marketing, who don't think about customer comms, to be like, I need to get a sign off from that team?
Yeah, I think eventually they realized that the fastest way to do it was to tell us first and not involve us at the end. And as a, hey, we're just gonna send this, by the way, and training them that like a by the way doesn't cut it. We need to be involved from step one. And we will not be afraid to make it drag out if we're involved at the last minute. If our process takes several days to review what they want to say, review the list that they want to send it to, review the schedule that they want to send it on to see if we have anything else going out. We have said that will take us days. If you want it sent when you want it sent, we should know at the beginning. And I think people have been very respectful by choice and because their email won't go out if they don't.
Oh, it's that sort of carrot and stick method. Do it this way, or you'll have to suffer the consequences of waiting behind all the people that did follow the instructions.
Yep.
Awesome. Kara, I know you have some thoughts on this subject as well, so I'll kick over to you to follow up on that.
Yeah. Oh, is this about data and using the right?
No, so this one is, how do you get sort of your colleagues to buy into, like, you're being the one that is the gatekeeper, as it were?
Yeah, totally. So I have a slide that to be completely honest, totally took it from someone and I made it my own, but it's a slide in every single enablement that I do. And I also have it on, we have a Confluence plays at HackerOne, and it's just like an overview on advocacy. So it's like my job responsibilities and also how I help you and how you can help me. And that really helps, like, one, let everyone know in the organization all the different tasks that I'm doing. Like, for example, if anyone works with sales, they probably only think you do sales reference requests and nothing else. So whenever they ask you for a sales reference request, I'm always like, oh, they want it yesterday. So this has really helped me whenever I do, any type of enablement, or even if I'm on a call and someone's like, what exactly do you do? Like, what is your position? It really helps, like, one overview of all customer advocacy, especially at my last two organizations. I was a team of one. So at some points I had like 20 different tasks and I had little projects with like a bunch of different people. So it really helped create an overview and also kind of showed like, I'm doing all this stuff for you, and this is how you can help me do my job because I'm helping you do your job. And it really kind of helped the reps like kind of look out for those things where like they maybe wouldn't have thought about this previously. Like, oh, I need a case study in XYZ. If I look out for this, then Kara can take the reins and kind of follow the process. So that has always really helped me and also kind of helped me like manage my tasks. Like, for example, when you do get that sales reference request and they're like, I need this now. And then you look at the opportunity and it's at like stage 2 and you're like, oh, you don't actually need this now. It kind of helped me like create a whole process where like I kind of had a lot backing me up when I'm like, I see you have a reference request. I have a few customers in mind, but I want you to wait until you're at stage 4. And this is why I want you to wait at stage 4. So that's really helped me, like, one, managing my time and making sure I'm not overburdened, and also kind of working with my internal teams for them to understand like what my responsibilities are.
That makes total sense. And yes, I think we've all been in that situation where somebody comes to you at the last minute, just like Allison was saying, and says, I need this. And you're like, that's funny. I need you to ask me 5 days ago. Not that I have these scars from doing this for 10 years, but I get a little bitter when this happens. But I think you're totally right, which is setting expectations at the beginning, and then sometimes over delivering just to like give them a little bit, but not making that the expectation that everybody can, anytime anybody says jump, we say how high, because that gets us into a position where we don't have a good work-life balance and things of that nature. I've been asking questions for a while, so we have some more, but I'd like to at this point take a step back. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask the panelists or myself for us to jump into. If not, I can go back to the questions that I have on these cards right in front of me that you can't see.
And people can come off mute. You don't have to type it in. Feel free.
And nobody's
I'll
allowed to
jump
say that
in
it's too
real-
early.
I'll jump in really quick here. I'm a team of one, so I'm a smaller startup where we don't have like a product marketer. I don't have a team kind of supporting me at all. So I think sometimes I struggle with what to prioritize and what can I do in order to kind of move us forward instead of just doing tasks as they come up. So I think I would just love to hear your advice or kind of what you would do in this situation.
And I see you nodding your head, so you're going to you.
Oh, I was going to ask a follow-up question around, are you thinking specifically around communications to customers, or in terms of like, what is the scope maybe of your role that you're like trying to figure out how to prioritize?
Yeah, good question. So definitely in terms of communication, how can I set up customers as they come through implementation to be more equipped with best practices? When I first came on board, I think they wanted me to be almost more like a one-to-one marketer for them, and we have 80 customers, and that's just like not possible. So I'm kind of trying to step back and like, how can I equip everyone to engage more in the platform and to be set up, but not with that like one-to-one relationship that I can't scale.
I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in. I'm totally going to dig a podcast out and then drop it in the chat for you, Morgan. That might be helpful. I think it's cool that you've been in the one-to-one space because you learn a lot, right? About what questions do people ask and what is it that they actually need? What are those best practices? And you might be in a place now where you can kind of scale those communications. And it sounds like maybe create like an onboarding nurture so an email series that goes out automatically, whether that's triggered by like a change in Salesforce, like post implementation, and then that adds them to a nurture, or you manually enroll them in a nurture, or when they sign as a customer, right? So you could trigger those communications that are like, hey, welcome to our platform. Here are some things that you need to know. And then I think Kristen here might have some ideas too about like on the customer education front, right? Because it's not just those communications, but the education and enablement to be successful with your platform.
Yeah, I'll jump in a little just because I've lived the one-man band at a scrappy startup thing, and had to balance like my role encompassed customer marketing, customer education, and customer community. And for a long time, we didn't even have a success team. So it was interesting. And I think that the things I've learned, and partially from my mistakes, was to really look at like what are the biggest business outcomes and goals that you're looking to achieve, because in the end, like you're there to keep being able to be there and help the company win. So it's like there's some low-hanging fruit in terms of feature that's not being adopted, or is there like what are the biggest struggles that they're having, and then just tackle it that way, and be realistic about setting expectations. I love what was said about in-app messaging, because I think like we would get like a terrible open rate, like 4% or something on our emails. But, in terms of what we got in app, it was much higher. And using community too as a lever to pull, like in my mind, it's all kind of a crazy braid of like community needs to be infused with education needs to be infused with community, and all of it together has to be communicated in digital touch points that make sense so that it feels like one voice. So it's a huge job for you to do by yourself, and it sucks because you're always going to miss on something. But if you focus on like with whoever is in terms of leadership, like what is the one thing that if you could really move the needle on next, you would do work on that, and then count that as a win.
That's all super helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kristen and Morgan, for the question. I will also say that going back to what Shannon said, automation is your friend. Anything that you can automate out of your day-to-day life is awesome. And the cool part is, if we go back to what we were talking about before, use the data as your guide. as somebody moves to the next step, they get another communication, or they get a piece of educational content, be like, hey, we noticed you were here, right? We have usage data of our software. So when we target certain things and we try to re-engage people, we're like, we see that you're using this. Here's some documentation that can help you get further. It doesn't necessarily seem like we're selling to people, but it's like we're just trying to help you in your user journey, that perhaps you will find us helpful and pay us at some point, right? We just want them to get a little bit further along in their journey. So I think that's trying to marry the whole thing that we were talking about, data, automation, trying to keep work-life balance, and I think this actually leads to my next question to anybody who wants to answer it, which is, I think the biggest buzzword in anybody's industry right now is, well, I guess it's two words that's, with periods in between, which is AI, right? How do you use, whether it is LLMs or various different analytics tools, to force multiply yourselves? Is it writing emails? Is it analyzing things? Is it doing communications at that front? I didn't talk to my panelists that I was going to ask this one, but surprise, I'm calling an audible. So anybody have thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I have one. So one of my first projects at HackerOne is rebuilding our content library. So I'm building a whole database with all of our case studies, all of our blogs. And so obviously I do not have time to read 50 case studies that are 6 pages long. So I actually just copy and paste them, put them in ChatGPT. And I was like, can you just please give me an overview of this? And that has helped me so much, just because it would take me forever to read all those case studies. And so it's really helpful for one, just knowing one, it helps me learn the product a little bit faster because I'm not reading all these case studies. And one, it really helps our internal teams, because if I don't have time to read the 6-page 50 case studies, obviously they do not. So it's really helpful for one, then getting a very quick snapshot where they're very confident sending off these case studies, because if they get a question on it, typically it's in my outline that's on the database that I'm currently building. So that's really helped me. One, just time management. I am a team of 2 this time, so I have a little bit more time, but it also helps me, like, one, getting to know all of our customer case studies as fast as I can, just so I'm able to, I'm sure everyone has a Slack that's like, the sales rep's like, oh, I need a case study on XYZ. So it really helps me know at least a few points on every single case study.
Awesome. Shannon, Allison, any thoughts on AI, or would you like to type that into to ChatGPT and get an answer back?
I know, right? What should I say about you?
Don't
I-
ask a computer about that about me. That would be bad.
I do try to be really nice to it. I'm like, hey, ChatGPT, and it'll be like, what's up, Shannon?
I do this.
Which is, yeah, I don't know. I just don't want to be rude to it, I guess. And I don't use it a lot for email communications, mostly because and I probably have not programmed it super well, is what it comes up with is not at all what I want in an email. It's like way too many emojis. It'll be super formal. Every output looks almost similar to a previous query. And if I ask it to be less formal, it's very informal. It's like my college students are sending an email. So I haven't found the happy medium with it, and it's just easier and faster for me to write the email from scratch. But I imagine that there is opportunity in the future for it to look at, or maybe not even like ChatGPT, because that's more kind of generation or analysis, but like built-in tools that are analyzing, let's say, subject lines, or analyzing preview text, or it's looking at segments of your audience to determine maybe what's working, what's not working. I would find that a lot more valuable. And I think some tools are building that into their platform, where AI is more surfacing insights and areas for improvement. In today's world, I'm not confident letting it write emails for me.
I think that's a good rule of thumb. Always check the work of AI. It's never everything you want it to be. Except for this one time I asked it to write a Shakespearean sonnet. That was pretty awesome. Allison, any thoughts on your end?
I'm an AI hater, so I think I'm even like less equipped to answer that. I've never been nice or mean to ChatGPT because I'm scared of it and I've never opened it. So
that's cool. I think there are so many different ways, or different ways to approach it, and I think the happy medium, I think, is what Shannon said, which is use it for the analytics side to help get you started. We like to talk about at Griffon, if it helps us get 40 to 50 to 60%, that at least takes off that much time that we have to work and then we sort of get the extra 40, or we finish that 40%, we move on. So, you know, things of that nature. Cool. Well, I'm looking at time. We got 14 minutes left. I got 3 more questions. Any other questions from our audience members, our therapy participants, as it were?
I don't know if we wanted to touch on in-app. I know there's a nice long thread kind of going in the chat.
We can totally do that. Let's talk about in-app messaging. How do you go about it? Like, going back to the data part, is it data like triggered? Is it persona triggered? Is it you just happen to log in on a random Wednesday and it's that time on Wednesday where you say happy Wednesday and you put a little camel emoji? Shannon, since you brought it up, you wanna jump in there?
I am not currently doing in-app, so we're implementing user pilot. I've used app queues in Pendo before. From a customer marketing perspective, often around like new release communications, or sometimes kind of like onboarding, feature tours, things like that. So definitely feel like I've only scratched the surface of an app. In terms of how we've done it, just maintaining kind of open lines with I found that the product designers were very concerned about the placement, how it looked, you know, how it was going to overlay. And so we had a Slack channel where I could say, hey, this is what it's going to look like. Here's where it's going to live. This is what's going to trigger it and who it's going to be for. And then they could look at, is there anything else that's going to interfere with it? And then product would do the same. So we just kind of had this, I'm not trying to control everything. I'm not trying to take app queues away from you. But obviously we want to collaborate, because I don't know if everybody saw, someone posted on LinkedIn the other day and they got like 3 pop-ups in a platform back to back. And that's really, I know Maureen's face is basically the gist of that person's post, was like, this is not a great experience. So I think we can all agree that we don't want to provide a poor user experience, that the whole point of in-app is to be helpful. And so instead of, one person, a rule Pendo, we just created a Slack channel and we just had some SLAs around, as you're developing this, post in the Slack channel, what does it look like? What pages is it on? Like, what is it being triggered by? Who's getting it? And then if nobody like dissents in let's say 5 days, then you can just push it live. And then we just had a documented library in Confluence so that you could see what was currently active. And then you just have to like remove it once you sunset the modal. So I found that to be helpful in terms of maintaining autonomy for customer marketing, but also for product. And also like, I think, and most people have already said this, just finding those shared goals, right? We all want to create a good user experience. We all want to help our customers. No one's in it to try to like pop up the crap out of people. And so I think if we start there, then we just find like what works for us as a group to make this actually beneficial to our customers.
Yeah, this is Erwin. I started the this stream on in-app messaging, and 2 companies ago, the product team bought it and basically said, no, customer marketing can't use it because we bought it. You can't use it. The product team eventually the entire team got laid off, and then we were able to take over and use it. And that's where I got my first experience was with that. I was just blown away at the impact on things like webinar registrations. You know, those very narrow specific events were great. And then at Forrester, I was involved in the procurement of it. We didn't pay for it, but we were one of the use cases that was brought up as a way to justify the expense because it's not cheap. And then we set up a committee of somebody from product, customer success, customer marketing, a few other parts of the company, and people would make formal requests. So we had a form, we'd meet once a week, and people would submit it, and we would make sure that it added value when somebody logged in to them as opposed to added value to us. So as I mentioned in the chat, anything that smacked of upsell, we wouldn't go in because that's not why they're coming into your applications to be upsold. That's what email is for. And we just found the results were super impressive. And the question was always, okay, is this just an email? Is this just a Pendo or a combination? The most powerful is when you can combine the two and actually start doing some attribution from the reports. So big fan.
Awesome. I will also say one thing that just popped into my head as we were talking about this, and Erwin, thank you for your perspective there. Is I don't know if anybody else saw or has been seeing the recent political upheaval about TikTok, right? And TikTok did this thing where they didn't actually give enough context to their users when they put in an app message that said, "Contact your representatives and tell them to not to support this bill." Well, what happened by not providing that context, so this is like the balance you have to do when you do these in-app messages, a lot of the representatives just got really annoyed at the tactics of which TikTok was going about this, because they just said, tell them this without even really a strategy. And so that type of communication actually kind of backfired. So I think there's a lot of strategy that needs to go into those messages, as opposed to we're just going to, send something because we think our people need to take an action. So I think going to what Erwin was talking about, and it appears he had to pop off, but I think that's a current real life example of how things can go horribly, horribly wrong, because TikTok did that and then lost like 75% to 25%, which if anybody follows Congress, that's a pretty impressive loss for anybody who is going into that environment. So any other thoughts on in-app things? I actually managed to have a quick segue into the next thing, even though I didn't plan that.
Yeah, I have one small thing that we've done in app that was super successful. So we had a local road show. So we had road shows. I think one was like the LA area, one was Austin, and I think another was Chicago. So we actually use, I don't know how this works, so if someone's more techie and can explain better, but it pretty much tracks their IP address when they're logging into the app. So it helped us find and that's actually how we planned our road shows, is we just took like all the people's like locations that they were logging in and seeing where we had the most customers, like created a heat map. And that was actually how we got a lot of registrants, because one, it wasn't getting granted, there's only so much you can do. Like, for example, I'm currently sourcing speakers and everyone lives everywhere, and it's not at all what it is on Salesforce. So the IP address actually helped us get a little bit better data. Granted, it was probably only 75% better, but it was still a really great way to, like, one, reaching out to people who are at least in the area, so you're not getting an invite to an event when you're like living in Boston. It was really localized to where they were at least logged in the past 30 days. So that really helped us, one, reach the right people and also get an uptick on attendees.
Or actually on that too, we've been trying to drive registration for some of our kind of more local compact roadshows as well. And my events manager and I were just playing around. We actually used LinkedIn Sales Navigator with a free Google Chrome plugin, where you basically like, here's the location, here are the titles I'm trying to blah, blah, blah. Here's my current customer list. And I was able to, via the Chrome export their locations, and then we've uploaded them into our database. So now we have correct contact level locations. So that was a really cool one for us. And I'm apologize if you said how you're grabbing the IP address. I'm sorry if I missed that.
Yeah, that was just we use Pendo. So it's just, I don't know how Pendo is set up, but it was just like one of the attributes that you could find by.
That makes sense. Cool. I'll send info on this.
Yeah, that would be great, because currently right now I went through manual LinkedIn's, which took forever.
Like unbelievable how much time I've spent doing it. And then one day I was like, that's so Raven, like, I wonder if, and then I'm like Googling, like, can I export this list, blah, 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 blah. And yes, it did still come with some manual cross-referencing, because like some of the emails or names or whatever weren't the same in LinkedIn, but like, I'll take what I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about like getting that extra 15, 20, 30, 40% of your time back to go do new things. And to build off that, Maureen, one of the things that we do at Griffon is we use a tool called Common Room. It's a community platform that allows you to pull in all of these different, I wouldn't necessarily say social media places, but you the social media, but also GitHub and meetup.com. And there you can pull in location of these people, right? So you can actually see where like your community groups are located. I say you can pull it in if they have self-identified on those various tools. But again, you're talking about LinkedIn, which is great. But if you can add meetup.com or GitHub or GitLab or Twitter or Facebook or whatever tools you're bringing into that one place, you can actually see, like, does the LinkedIn data say the same thing as the meetup.com data or things of that nature. So that's been really helpful for our community team. Cool. All right. So we have 4 minutes left. I'm going to quick rapid fire to my panelists. I'm going to start with rapid fire. I'm going to end with rapid fire. So 2 questions on this one. With communications, where have you seen something go right? And probably more entertaining, where have you seen something go horribly, horribly wrong? Allison, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. I think our most recent, very nearly horribly awry was we had an error for one of our products, and of course we had to notify our customers that something had happened, not to worry, there's a deploy in the works. And we had this list ready to go. We had gotten it ready to send, and someone from the product team said, you know, there's a new list. Great, love that. It's a lot bigger, so I was like, great, we're just adding more people. That's fine, not like joyful, but fine. Compared it, completely different. Just no one was the same. And we said, why is no one the same? And they said, oh, the first list was just wrong, sorry. Very close to just emailing a bunch of people who had no error, saying that they had experienced some sort of loss over the past 48 hours, which would have been extremely unpleasant to deal with the aftermath of. Not quite horribly awry because it didn't happen, but really gave me the sweats there. Something that went really well, I think speaks to Shannon's point about how like it doesn't have to be one-on-one me emailing Shannon personally because I know she's into herbalism this year. It just has to seem personal enough for her to think that I wrote it just to her. When we did our rebrand at the end of last year, part of it was for customers. We designed like a limited edition swag pack of new brand swag. We are known for not doing swag, so we knew that this would be a pretty good deal. That was great. We were able to say, you know, you're one of our top customers. You've been asking. We can assume that that's true because so many of them do, and we always say no. And you know, we've prepared something limited edition. That went super well. We ended up with like a 40% acceptance rate, which was just like huge for us. So that was great. And I think really speaks to what Shannon said earlier. Like you do not have to know every single thing about every single person to like send something personal that like blows their socks off.
Love it. Love it. Kara, Shannon,
Yeah,
worst, best.
Yeah, I'll have a quick one. So at Sligo, a big responsibility was peer reviews, which is, as everyone knows, super challenging. So I pretty much had no idea what I was doing because I never did them previously. And so I just took a template that someone used previously that was like maybe 5 paragraphs long asking for a GT review. And like 2 weeks in, I got absolutely zero traction with it. So I just kind of like played around with, and also I was using only Salesforce data, which was absolutely terrible because I really needed the people who were actually using the app and logging in and were actually end users rather than the people that were like C-suite and stuff like that. So I quickly like rewrote that. I probably used ChatGPT, I can't remember, but made it a lot more condensed and also just created a sequence. So I just used Outreach and I just created a sequence through Outreach that gave them 3 different emails over a period of I think like 6 weeks. So it wasn't super overwhelming to them. And they were also super short and created like a call to action date. So I just created a date that was like 2 weeks before the actual deadline for G2. And just to kind of remind them like, oh yeah, this is top of mind. It only takes like 15 minutes, and also adding in a few like tips and tricks on how to do the review. So it was maybe like I took that 5 paragraphs and made it like 1 paragraph, a few tips, and then also if you have any questions, please contact me. Then I also played around with the subject lines a little, and that really kind of helped like one kind of target what works best and what doesn't work best. And also making it, since it's so short, it's kind of a little bit more obvious that like I didn't just send it to like 5,000 people since it was so condensed. And then I also used like a macro, which was able to like create a little bit better emails. So like, for example, like the security engineer doesn't really pop and play into an email. I would just fix their titles a little to make it seem a little bit more like easy and like more like a human sent it rather than just a bot.
And that's always the important part, right? Is we want to see more human. And I was going to ask Shannon, but Shannon had to drop. So we'll just say this was where something went horribly wrong with our planning because we got to the top of the hour. But speaking of which, I think we've now come to the end of this group therapy. If you have more emotional things that you have to offload, feel free to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn or schedule more time with Dana, or as Dana started this conversation, if you weren't here, join the community in Boston come October, I think is when it is this year. It's a lovely time. Yeah, if there's any other questions, all of us are on LinkedIn or we're in the community. Dana, is there anything, other announcements that we need to make, or should we give everybody their time back? And I'm going to head on a waterfall hike.
Yeah, enjoy the waterfall. I just put some links where the replay for this will be. Keep the conversation going in Slack. If you're not in Slack, CustomerX Slack, join it, because there will be some new announcements coming later this spring for a relaunch and a new platform. We're moving away from Slack. So get excited. And it's going to tie into CustomerXCon in the fall. And if you want to be involved in CustomerXCon at all, reach out to me. We're currently sourcing speakers and group therapy leaders, all that fun stuff. So thank you, Daniel. Thanks, Allison, Shannon, and Kara. And thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, y'all.